Hey guys, it's your boy Ruff. Welcome to episode 2 of Know Your Tank. Thank y'all so much for the support on episode 1, and I hope it helps. I hope that you guys that are watching this, I've posted into the console forums, in the English speaking forums. Unfortunately, I don't know any other languages, so that's on me. But if anybody out there does, hey, if you want to go post it in the other forums, feel free to translate for me. That would be awesome. But episode 2, what are we going to be talking about today? Number 1, crews and tank trees. So we're going to be looking at, again, not getting into any gameplay specifics yet. That's shortly coming, very, very quickly. Could be the next episode, actually. Unless something pops up that I think I need to talk about. But until then, we are going to be talking about crews and tank trees. Now, this is going to be live yet again. This is something that I think is just best for, again, something like this. And in the gameplays, I'll actually select clips and talk about those clips. So it will be cut and edited. But this is not going to be, and the main reason is, again, I think it's just better to kind of talk to you guys rather than trying to cut and edit and all that. So yeah, let's get right into it. And so again, if you hear me stop to take a drink or to pause to take a breath, just I apologize if that bothers you, but this is straight live, no editing. So first thing we need to talk about is crews. I think this is really important. And the main reason is because I think a lot of people, I know for me, it was a little confusing. The crews was somewhat confusing, especially on the PC side. They have made it easier to understand, I think, on the console side. But personally, I really do understand the crews even more now, and a lot of that has to do with the fact of what we talked about in episode 1. You know, using those websites can really help with understanding crew skills and abilities, or skills and perks, and figuring out what you should pick next. And so hopefully I'm going to help you efficiently do those things, and that's really what this video is about, is the efficiency. I guess it should be called tank and crew efficiency, because essentially that's what we're talking about today, is how to efficiently move up tank trees and how efficiently to move your crews. So first off, when should you pay for crews? So when you go in and you buy a new vehicle, you know, we could buy any of these. Let's just buy this one. Purchase, yes. Okay, it's going to do a nice little cutscene. And it's going to ask you, when you buy a new tank, any tank of any type, doesn't have to be heavy, or it doesn't matter. It's going to ask you to manage your crew, and you're going to have to select a crew member. So when you do this, when should you pay for crews? When should you pay? So what I mean by that is, when you first unlock your very first tank, you're going to need to recruit a crew. You can either pay 500 gold and get them already at 100% and be able to immediately learn a perk, 75% for 50,000 silver, which Intel is exactly what it says, 75% of XP before your first perk. And then the minimum one, which is free, is the rapid courses, which is 50%. So you have to get 50% of the XP to be able to get to your first perk. Okay, so when should we spend gold? When should we spend silver? And when should we do free? Well, when you first start off, and we're going to get a little bit more in detail about this on the tank trees, but you should never spend gold when you first get a new crew member. Mainly because once you get to the middle tiers, which we'll talk about in the trees, but you're going to be working on developing your crew. And until then, you don't really want to spend gold at the lower tiers, like this MS1 that we just bought. We also don't really want to spend 50,000 silver. And the reason why, in my opinion, is because we're going to be moving so quickly through the first few tiers, because it doesn't take a lot of XP to get through the first 3 or 4 tiers. They're not going to have time to develop to 100% anyway. So we just want to go ahead and go with free. Now in this case, we actually have some unassigned crew members that we can just use. So I like to just do that when I can. When you buy a tank, let's say at a 4 or 5 tier, that's generally what I like to do. But again, because we're on a tier 1, we want to recruit a free crew member. Now I don't want to get another crew member because it would just add to my stock. And I actually don't even, I just wanted to show you guys that. So actually I'm just going to sell this tank because I don't really want it. It didn't cost me anything, and it didn't cost me anything, or I didn't get anything for selling it anyway. So that is when you should spend silver or gold, because the only time you should spend silver or gold is, again, when you are buying into a tier 5 tank that maybe you sold off later. Let's say I sell this T1 and I come back to it later. I might want to go ahead and maybe it's a tank battle or something and they need T1 heavies. Well, I might go ahead and just buy a crew member or spend the gold to put in a very developed crew member into this tank. Likewise, if I decide I stop going up the T1 heavy tree and decide to come back to it, at tier 5, I might want to go ahead and just spend the silver to fill in the crew member. So the second thing is, what types of skills or perks should you pick for your crew members once you have the opportunity? And what I found is that you want to, again, go back to episode 1. It'll show you what kind of perks and skills you should use. I guess we should talk about what is a skill and a perk first. So skills are the little device in the top left corner here you can see on firefighting, and perks is the lightning bolt on the something like Brother in Arms. So what are the difference in these two? Well, skills, when you apply them to a crew member, automatically already are active. So let's take camouflage, for example. Camouflage reduces your vehicle visibility, and as the skill, essentially as you play with this crew member, the more XP he gets into camouflage, the more effective camouflage becomes. So when you first apply camouflage, it's going to have the weakest basically skill, because it's not going, you're still going to be pretty much as visible as if you didn't even have it. But as you level up, and let's say you cap out camouflage, you will actually end up having the best vehicle reduced visibility as you possibly can. Perks, on the other hand, like Brother in Arms, are not active until they are 100%. So let's take a look at Rabbit here, who is our T1 guy. You can see that he is, or let's look at Morton here, okay, who's in the T2. If you look, you can see that his camouflage is only, you know, basically 1/10. Well, I don't know if it's 1/10. It's probably more than that, like 1/20th of the way there, or not 1/20th. It's like 20% filled. So he's effectively has 20% of the camo to reduce visibility. Okay. And whenever you move your abilities around, you always keep your skills. So what I mean by that is, when should we retrain skills? And I think this is something that a lot of people don't know. As you can see here, we moved from tier 4 to tier 5, we basically, when we decided to go up to the T1, we brought Rabbit with us. And what we did was we spent the silver to start at 75%. And that's why you can see in the top right corner, under his rank, you'll see that his skill, which is repairs, is not highlighted. And that's because he has yet to hit 100% again in the T1. Now, effectively, what this is saying is when you retrain at 75%, he needs 25% more XP to learn essentially how to run a T1 heavy tank. As soon as he hits 100%, which you can see we're very, very close. We're probably 95% of the way there. Once we hit that 100%, it'll immediately go back to repairs, and it'll automatically be at the almost 50% that he's at. So actually, if we click on him, you can see we're 8% of XP left before our next skill. Where our next skill, he already has started to learn repairs on the previous tank. And as soon as we get that 8%, he'll start learning repairs again. But the repairs will not start over. It'll start exactly where it's at right now, which is almost 50%, which is a huge perk. And I'm going to show you why this is so important. So if we go out and go over to our IS3. Now this crew member is at 100%. He already has a perk learned. As you can see in the bottom right corner, he has Brother in Arms already learned, and he's almost got repairs learned. So how did we do this? Did we just play a ton? And yeah, we've played a decent amount on the IS3. But let me show you what is an advantage. So if you take what we just learned, which is that skills are effective immediately when you apply them, or yeah, and skills, and then perks are only applied when they're at 100%, that is somewhat a strategy to determine which skills and perks you should pick first. So if you, again, in episode 1, I go to the website, I see which skills or perks that the best players are using on the IS3, and the top 2 are repairs and Brother in Arms. So which one should we select first? Well, based on what we just said, you should always select repairs first, because we'll immediately get the effect of repairs immediately, and we'll have that as we're leveling up. But as soon as your repairs hits 100%, you would think, oh, let's just go ahead and select Brother in Arms. But that's actually a loss in skill. The reason why is because your skills for repairs is 100%, but Brother in Arms, as it's leveling, is ineffective. So it's like you don't even have anything. What you can do is actually retrain the 100% perk, which in that case was repairs at the time, into Brother in Arms, and it'll already be 100%. So you get the effects of Brother in Arms immediately. So for example, let's say I wanted to change Brother in Arms to 6 cents. It's 10 gold. That's it, 10 gold. And if I were to pay this right now, I would then have 6 cents at 100%, and it would automatically be active instead of Brother in Arms. So when our repairs gets all the way up to 100% on our IS3 here, we're going to then switch it to, let's say 6 cents is the next best skill or perk. Then we'll go ahead and pay for 6 cents and then reselect repairs and let it level up again. That way we have the most active skills and perks as possible. Now, let's say the next best ability to select on the IS3, which it's not, but let's just say it's Jack of all trades. In that situation, we would just go ahead and leave repairs at 100% and go ahead and select Jack of all trades as our next skill, because it will automatically have it active. And so whenever the next ability that is the best one for your tank is a perk, that is when you want to pay the 10 gold to switch it over once it hits 100%. And then you want to just reselect the previous skill. So that is essentially the best, most efficient way to reassign perks on your characters. I hope that makes sense. If you need, or if you have questions, feel free to comment below and ask. But essentially, you always want to have as many perks active as possible. If we were to leave our repairs again at 100%, sure, we're getting the most effective repair as possible. But Brother in Arms would be where repairs is right now, not even active. Instead, we still get the benefits from repairs and Brother in Arms. So the next thing I want to talk about is the tank trees, and this is probably the most fun thing to do, is trying to figure out what tree you should pick. And I think this is kind of interesting. How do you decide what tank tree to go down? And I think as a new player, it is difficult because there are a lot of options. You have obviously each faction, then you have artillery, TDs, light tanks, medium tanks, heavy tanks. So you have a lot of choices, but what I would suggest is through the first 3 or 4 tiers, play every single type of tank. Play a TD, play a artillery, and again, from the episode 1 video, use those websites to compare different artilleries with other faction artilleries. We can compare the T57, for example, in tier 2 to the GPZ MK, and we can determine which one we like. One might do more damage, one might be a little faster, one might aim a little faster. Determine what is important to you when you look at each tank, and test each tank out. Once you figure out that I love playing TDs, for example, let's just say you love playing TDs and you decide I really want to play a TD. Well, then what I would do is again go back to those websites and find the tier 10 between a couple tanks that you like. And when you find out which tier 10 TD that you want to go for, you're done. Let's say you wanted to go for the E3. Okay, now what tier or what tree you need to go down. You need to go down the T18 tier and just basically go up all the way to the E3. And I think the main thing to take from this is stick with a tree, because essentially, from what I've read online and from my experience on the PC, is if you work your way up, the higher tiers you get to, the harder and harder it's going to be. The better players are obviously playing from tier 8 on. The majority of players are in the middle tiers, and then the weaker players are at the lower tiers. That's just how it works. And so when you finally get to tier 10 and start playing the E3 a lot and leveling it up, next thing you know, you're ready to start a new one. Let's say I want to get to the E5 next. Okay, I already have the the E3, the TD at tier 10. Now I want to stay in the American tree and I want to get the E5. Well, you'll have to go all the way back down to the lower tiers to start over. And the benefit of that is you have all this experience from the later tiers that will actually make the lower tiers and mid tiers much easier, because you understand the game even better. So that's why I say stick to a tree, determine what you like to play, stick to that tree, even if it's artillery or whatever, and go all the way to tier 10. Focus on that tree, because it can get very overwhelming to just buy a bunch of low tiers and you get stuck around the lower to mid tiers and never get your way all the way to tier 10, where you can really learn a lot about the game and get even better. And so when you go back down to the lower tiers, you're going to be a much higher skill level. So we talked about sticking with a tier. Well, when do you move up to a tier? This is very important. So let's use the T1 as an example. I am currently working on this tier myself to get to the E5. And if we look at the packages, essentially what we want to do is, you can see here under the T1 heavy on the far left, the XP under that tank is actually the XP that you've gained for this tank specifically. My strategy, and I recommend this to a lot of people, is to only use your tank XP. That's the XP under this tank. Basically, any XP that you earn from playing this tank to buy additional upgrades and actually buy the next tank to go up to the next tier. In other words, in this case, we need another 26,000 XP essentially to be able to buy the M6. Now, we could convert enough XP right now to go ahead and buy the M6. I don't personally like using converted XP on a tree where I can just play the current tank. Now, there's reasons why I say that. Number one is waiting and playing this tank gets you better at this tank. It gives you more skill and practice at this tier before moving up to a tier, and it develops your crew members, which is very, very important the further you move up in the trees. So again, only use the tank XP to basically buy upgrades and then also to buy the tank. Now, when do we use converted XP? When do I suggest using converted XP? Well, that is, let's say I were to play enough of the T1, get 26,000 more XP, and then buy the M6. Okay, buy the M6. Here's the M6 tree. When do we use converted XP? Well, my suggestion is it's very tough to start in a new tier at the base tank because it has the worst gun, the worst engine, the worst everything. You can see here the best upgrade upgrades everything from the base tank. So what I would suggest is generally you want to spend converted XP to the first upgrade that gives you an upgraded gun. And the reason for that is so that way you can penetrate and actually do damage to the higher tiers, because if you're at a tier 6, you could be possibly fighting against tier 7s or 8s. And if you come across a tier 8 with a much weaker gun, you are in trouble because you're probably not going to be able to penetrate and you're probably not going to be able to do any damage. So you can see here, even in this case, it's only 5,000 XP to get the first gun and actually another 16,000 to get an even better gun. So a little bit more damage, probably a little bit more penetration as well. Now the best one is the 24,000, the T1E1. But 24,000 is quite a bit. That gets on up there. So in this case, we need about 22,000 converted experience. So let's see how much that would actually cost. If we go over to the store and do convert, let's go up to 20,000. So you can see down low below, we're gonna get about 22,000. So it's gonna cost 735 gold to basically unlock. Now this is a personal preference. There are a lot of people out there that don't like spending gold, and if that's the case, then when you go back over and you go to the M6, let's say you don't want to spend the gold and you're like, well, that's not worth it for just 5,000. I can just play for 5,000 and that's perfectly fine. If you don't want to spend gold, for me personally, it's frustrating to get into a new tier and not be able to do damage. I personally, in this case, I would actually probably go ahead and buy both of these. So I would spend the 700 gold to go ahead and get the best one, because I'm going to go ahead and still use this tank to level up 24,000 and go ahead and upgrade, and then another 42,000, and that's a pretty good grind. And the reason why I don't want to convert to get this is because at this point I have a pretty good amount of damage. I've upgraded my sights, I've upgraded my engine, my track. So at this point, this upgrades your gun and your ability to, your range essentially on your communications, which is important But to me, I'd rather just play and get to 24,000 at this point, because I've already upgraded my gun quite a bit from where we were. And again, the 5,000 is kind of a pushover. Now what you could do is play, get the 5,000 unlocked, then convert 16,000, but I'd just rather go ahead and convert all the way. And by playing this 24,000 XP in the tank and using the tank XP at that point to unlock this, and then essentially eventually buy the T29, I'm developing my crew that whole time, and that is what ends up being very important. So again, just my preference. What do you guys do? Please put down in the comments below what you prefer. Do you prefer to just play from the beginning and just bite the bullet and accept the fact that you're not gonna always be able to do damage and penetrate, or do you like to convert and actually go ahead and get a little bit of an upgrade? You can see here with the IS-3, it's quite a bit, because it's a tier 8, so it's actually quite a bit to unlock. You can see here that we have 35,000 XP, and so we never converted on this, and this was before I actually had this belief. I was just kind of biting the bullet, and what I've learned from my experience is that it's just not very fun. I'd much rather just convert the 73,000 from this point forward, which is a lot of gold. As you can see, it was 700 gold to get about 25,000. So, you know, we're looking at quite a bit of gold to buy this, but it makes your time playing so much better. Because look, the IS-3, once you convert to 73,000, sure, decent amount of gold, but now you can compete at this tier. You're gonna have another 98,000 to upgrade even further, and then another 164,000 before you can get the IS-8. Which is plenty of time for you to learn the tier, learn the tank, get your crew members developed before you move on to the next tier. And so that's personally my opinion. And again, I think that really helps you at every tier. It's better to go ahead and upgrade rather than, you know, just grinding through a ton of XP. I'm only at 35,000 XP, and I've played a decent amount of IS-3 games. So you know, 73,000, once we spin this, if we were to wait, then finally we would actually be able to fight pretty consistently. But we're struggling right now because we never converted. And again, that's just preference. If you like spending the gold, that's okay. But you know, that's really up to you. Now the question is, I think when you get to a new tier or new tank, let's say I were to go up to the IS-8, what do you do with your crew members? Personally, each tier is a little different. So when we look at the tiers, when you first buy your first tank, let's say let's go to the T1 heavy line here. So first you're gonna buy, let's say, the T1, okay? You're going to put in a crew member for free, and then you're going to eventually get enough XP to go to the T2. I do not think you need to spend the gold to maintain. First off, you're not going to get your crew member up to 100% anyway. So go ahead and buy. I usually buy new crew members on each tier up to tier 4. From what I've read, a lot of people either do tier 4 or tier 5 is where they start holding on to their crew members. Personally, I do 4. And so essentially at tier 4, because it's a decent gap to the next tank, I'll usually go ahead and spend the silver at tier 4. Now once from tier 5 on, I'm going to spend gold to maintain all of my skills. You can make an argument that from tier 5 to maybe like tier 5 and tier 6, you might just want to spend silver, and then as your guy gets the 25% XP, he'll get all his perks back like we talked about earlier. But essentially, I mean, the thing is, when you move up, you have to remember that everyone you're fighting against, especially in the higher tiers, are going to have all these perks. So in the middle tiers, from like 5 to 7, you can justify spending, if you don't want to spend the gold, you can justify spending silver to be able to get your crew members at 75%. But past that, the 8, 9, and 10 tiers, for sure, you'll want to spend the gold to, and it does get more expensive as the tiers get higher, but you definitely want to spend the gold to have your perks immediately, so that way you're not at a disadvantage compared to those who do have the perks. So again, it's really up to you. I would not suggest spending any silver or gold until tier 4. At tier 4, that's generally when I like to spend my silver. Tier 5 and 6, I either spend silver or gold. And then 7 plus is generally gold for me, just because I don't want to be at a disadvantage with my skills. So I hope this helped. It's definitely a lot of opinions based, because you have to determine whether or not you are a gold, willing to use gold to help you kind of skip past a few things. But I personally do. I think it's something that helps a lot, especially when you're in a new tier. You want to have as much advantage as you possibly can when you're not only trying out a new tier, but facing new tanks. And I think it really helps to spend the gold in certain situations. So I hope this helps get you to know how to exchange perks between your crew members, how to pick a tree, and when to upgrade, and what XP to use to upgrade your tank, and then eventually also use converted XP. So that's it for episode 2. I really wanted to make this one about just how to move up tank trees and essentially things outside the actual gameplay. I believe the next episode we'll start looking at the actual tanks. I believe I'm going to do artillery first, and we'll just move across and talk about how to play each one. And it's going to be very interesting, because every tier, even or range of tiers, is different. I think most of you know, playing a light tank in the first 3 or 4 tiers is completely different than playing in the mid to higher tiers as the light tank. And so we're going to be going over each of those for you guys. I hope you guys enjoy it, and we will begin. Again, we're going to be coming out with these every week until we complete the series, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. Again, please like, subscribe if you guys enjoyed this video, join the Ruff Squad, and that's it. Ruff out.